on the eve of glory, whilst brooding over the prospects of a bright and happy future, whilst meditating upon the risky rights of justice, there we remain, wanderers on the cloudy surface of mental woe, disappointment, and danger, inhabitants of the grim sphere of painted imagery, partakers of the poisonous dregs of concocted injustice. Yet such is life.
That's life.
Sir John's visits began now to be numerous at Dilworth Castle, each visit serving further to strengthen the link of relationship and bury in the heaving breast of seeking solace the dull delight of the weary past. As the weeks wore on, he reckoned them only as days, when comparing their loving length with those of the bleak years he tried to enjoy alone, before taking such steps, yes, serious steps, as those fancied by the would-be bachelor. At first he was careless and indifferent to the flowery harangues of mothers who paid him periodical visits, with their daughters of apology, and firmly retained the obstinate qualities of an autocratic ruler, until softened in the presence of one he found he was learning to steadily love. He believed now that the chief stripes, viz. Observation, inclination, advancement, and accomplishment, in the well-spun web of matrimony, must harmonize with the groundwork of happiness, without which our lives are not worth an unstamped coin. Love's path, on which Sir John was known now to tread with a step of intensity, seemed smooth as the ice of Inglewood. There were no obstacles in his way of which he was yet aware, save imagination. This also was chased from his mind by the evident and ample return of Irene's polished affection, the foul gloss of which he failed to notice, and whose pretensions were so cleverly carried out as to defy detection. Irene was an accomplished and clever girl, and well able to sustain her hidden regard throughout for one who, for years previous, had been endeavoring to remove the great barrier of position which blocked his path of approach towards her affection. As yet her parentage was totally unknown to Sir John. Still he found it must not have belonged to the rude and ridiculous, since she possessed all the qualities outwardly and features of a highly refined race. And when only a girl of 11 summers, when the worthy hand of benevolence, friendship, and love clutched the tiny fingers of absolute want, there visibly seemed nothing lacking in appearance, manner, or education to solicit the pity or suspicion of her charitable guardian and protector. Sir John Dunfern's many visits of late to Dilworth Castle had been creating quite a sensation throughout the quiet corners of costly curiosity, until an announcement appeared in Mac's Society Journal to the following effect. A marriage is arranged to take place in August between Sir John Dunfern of Dunferth Mansion, County Kent, and Irene Iddesleigh, adopted daughter of Lord and Lady Dilworth of Dilworth Castle in same county. This notice, no doubt, caused the partakers in drawing-room tete-a-tetes to share in the pangs of jealousy, with silent resentment, perplexity. A little would find refuge within the homes of many who led society by the string of superficial show and pompous importance. And during the interval that elapsed between such an announcement and its important celebration, many and infamous were the charges poured forth against Irene Iddesleigh. The month preceding Irene's wedding was one of merriment at Dilworth Castle, Lord and Lady Dilworth extending the social hand of fashionable folly on 4 different occasions. They seemed drunk with delight that Irene, whom they looked upon as their own daughter, should carry off the palm of purity, whilst affluence, position, and title were for years waiting with restless pride to triumph at its grasp. It was at the second of these social gatherings that the first seed of jealousy was sown within the breast of Sir John Dunfern, and which had a tendency to remain until it gradually grew to such a rapid state of maturity as to be rooted, if possible, forever from its dusty bed of ambush. Yes, when the merriment was at its height, and the heat too oppressive to allow much comfort to the corpulent, the espoused of Irene dropped unexpectedly out of the midst of the aristocratic throng, and being passionately an ardent admirer of the fairy-like fruits of the efforts of the horticulturalist, directed his footsteps towards the well-filled conservatory at the south wing of the building. The different shaded lights which dangled from its roof bestowed a look of Indian exquisiteness on the many quaint and delicate productions of nature that rested daintily in their beds of terracotta tint. But before leaving the room, he vaguely scanned the throng to catch a glimpse of Irene, and failed to notice her amongst the many who danced so gaily to the well-timed tunes of the celebrated pianist Charles Woden, whose musical touch was always capable of melting the most hardened sinner into moods of mellow softness, or cheering the most downcast and raising their drooping look of sadness to that of high-strung hilarity. Sir John wandered in and out through the numerous windings of sweetest fragrance until arriving at the farthest corner of rather darkened shade, and on a wire couch beheld the object of his pursuit in closest conversation with her tutor, whose name he had altogether failed to remember, only having had the pleasure of his acquaintance a few hours before. "Can it be possible?" exclaimed Sir John in profound astonishment. "Why, I have been searching for you for some time past, and have accidentally found you at last." Irene, rising to her feet in a second, was utterly dazed, and had the dim light showed her proud face to advantage, the ruddy glow of deepest crimson guilt would have manifested itself to a much greater degree. Making multitudinous apologies, etc., she at once joined Sir John, who led her back in apparent triumph to share the next waltz. How the true heart beat with growing passion during the remainder of the merry festivity! And as the final announcement of separation was whispered from ear to ear, the gradual wane of love's lofty rite would fain have dwindled into pompous nothing, as the thought kept tickling his warm enthusiasm with the nimble fingers of jealousy. That she whom he had ardently hoped would share his future with sheer and loving caresses of constant companionship and wife-like wisdom should be trapped in probably vowing to another her great devotion for him. But better allow this sickening thought to die on the eve of insult, rather than live in the breast of him who at no distant date would hear the merry peals of wedding bells ring with gladness, and naturally rejoice at the object of their origin.
You know, I love the way this book is written. I feel like I really know these characters. Like they're people that I know and understand their motivations, and indeed understand what's going on in general. Big thank you to everyone who made this exhibit possible, particularly Andre D., Break System BSE, Michael Fattori, Zachary Snowden-Smith, and Xana Zira. Thank you all so much for watching, and thanks for being you.